Is there anything more disturbing than discovering that your deepest fears aren't actually yours? That inexplicable feeling of panic, that phobia that never made sense, might actually be a scar left by a life you don't remember living. My name is David Mitchell, and for 15 years I've dedicated myself to investigating phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality. Throughout these years, I've received hundreds of accounts from ordinary people who experience the impossible to explain. But among all the cases I've documented, there's one category that both fascinates and haunts me. Memories of past lives that manifest as premonitions. You might be skeptical. I was. You might believe we're just chemistry and neurons, that when we die we simply cease to exist. But what if I told you there are people who manage to avoid tragedies because their souls kept scars from previous deaths? What if I told you there are individuals walking among us who carry, unknowingly, memories of how they perished in other times, other bodies? The two accounts you're about to hear came to me just 1 week apart. Two people who never met, living in different states, but connected by the same terrible truth. Sometimes death teaches us how to live. These are their stories, told in their own words. Story 1. The Echo of the Blade. Account by Sarah Chen, 34 years old, graphic designer, San Francisco, California. My name is Sarah, and until 6 months ago, I was a completely normal person. I've worked as a designer for 10 years, have a small but comfortable apartment in the Mission District, and my biggest worry in life was meeting project deadlines, until the day I started dying every night. It began as a common nightmare. I was in a town square, surrounded by a screaming crowd. The smell was horrible. Sweat, fear, something rotten in the air. There was a wooden structure in front of me, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled my blood, that it was meant for me. In the dream, I had long brown hair and wore a worn blue dress. My hands were tied behind my back, and then I saw the blade, an enormous gleaming blade, suspended like a guillotine. The sound when it fell was deafening, a clean cut through the air that ended in a terrible metallic thud. I always woke up at the exact moment of impact, heart racing and hands shaking. At first I thought it was work stress. I started drinking chamomile tea before bed, tried meditation, even bought an aromatherapy diffuser. Nothing worked. Every night, the same square, the same crowd, the same blade. But the worst part was when the dream started bleeding into my waking life. The first time happened on a Tuesday. I was going down the stairs at the Montgomery BART station when I felt it. A sudden chill on the back of my neck, as if something sharp was approaching my head. I looked up instinctively and saw that one of the overhead signs was swaying. Strangely, the bolts visibly loose. I moved away immediately. 5 minutes later, the sign crashed down exactly where I had been walking. Coincidence, I told myself. Just a coincidence. But the coincidences started multiplying. At the office, whenever I walked near the industrial paper cutter, I felt that same chill on my neck. In my kitchen at home, my hand would shake whenever I reached for the large knife. And every time I felt that sensation, something dangerous happened right after. The day that changed everything was on a rainy Thursday in March. I was walking home from work, going down Market Street, when I saw the construction workers. They were installing a new digital billboard on a commercial building, using a crane. The sign was massive, must have weighed about 400 pounds, and was being hoisted right above the sidewalk. That's when it happened. It wasn't just the chill this time. It was like the entire world stopped. I could smell that town, square from my dream, hear the crowd screams. And then, with a clarity that terrified me, I remembered. It wasn't just a dream. It was a memory. I had died in that square. Not in this life, but in another. In a time when women were executed in public squares, when crowds came to watch like it was entertainment. I had been Marie, a French peasant accused of stealing bread, and that blade had cut through my neck in 1794. As this memory flooded through me, I heard a horrible metallic Crack! I looked up and saw the billboard breaking free from the crane, plummeting directly toward where I was standing. I didn't think. My body threw itself to the side with an agility I didn't know I had. The sign shattered on the concrete, exactly where I had been standing 2 seconds before. If I hadn't moved. The workers came running down, asking if I was okay. I said yes, but it was a lie. I would never be the same again. Because now I know the truth. Those dreams weren't nightmares. They were warnings. My soul kept the memory of how I died once, and it was protecting me so it wouldn't happen again. Since then, I've learned to trust that sensation. It's already saved me from 3 car accidents, a building fire, and a bar fight that ended with someone getting stabbed. Whenever I feel that chill on my neck, I know. Something sharp, something cutting is about to hurt me. The question that won't leave my mind, and that I ask you who are listening to this, is, how many times have you died? And could it be that your inexplicable phobias, your senseless fears, are actually your soul trying to keep you alive this time? Sarah's story touched me deeply, not just because of the intensity of her experience, but because of how she learned to trust something that defies all logic. But if you think memories of past lives only manifest through dreams or visions, you need to hear the next account. Sometimes, these memories disguise themselves as apparently irrational phobias, fears that never made sense until the day they make all the difference between life and death. Story 2, Deep Waters. Account by Marcus Johnson, 41 years old, civil engineer, Miami, Florida. I've always been afraid of water. It's not a common phobia, like being afraid of heights or enclosed spaces. It's something more primitive, more visceral. Since childhood, the simple sight of a swimming pool made me break out in cold sweat. The sound of ocean, waves made me nauseous. And heavy rain? I'd go into total panic. My family never understood. We lived in Miami near the beach, and everyone was always in the water. My parents took me to 3 different psychologists when I was a teenager. They all said the same thing. Forgotten childhood trauma, maybe some accident in early infancy. But I always knew it wasn't that. It was something older, deeper. For years I managed to avoid water. I did everything to not have to explain my phobia. When friends called me to the beach, I'd make up excuses. When there were pool parties, I'd stay far from the edge. It became part of my personality. Marcus, the guy who doesn't like water. Everything changed on a Tuesday in January this year. I was at a construction site in downtown Miami, supervising the construction of a residential building. It was one of those unbearably hot days, the asphalt melting, everyone sweating like animals. The building was on a street that cornered the bay, and the wind brought that ocean smell that always made me uneasy. But I was focused on work, checking the basement structures, when something strange happened. I was going down to the 3rd basement level, where the garage would be, when I felt something I had never felt before. It wasn't fear of water, it was something else. It was like I was remembering. The air down there was heavy, humid. The concrete walls were sweating constant moisture, and there was that wet earth, smell you get near rivers. Suddenly, without warning, my mind was flooded with images. I was in a dark place, very dark. There was water around, cold water rising through my feet, my waist, my chest. I couldn't move. My hands were trapped by something heavy, metallic. And I knew, with terrible certainty, that I was going to die there. But it wasn't me, Marcus, 41 years old. It was another person, in another place, in another time. I was younger, had long hair, wore clothes that seemed from centuries ago. And I was sinking in a ship. The memory came all at once like a dam bursting. I was James, a 24-year-old English sailor, and I was in the hold of our ship during a storm in the North Atlantic. The ship had hit a rock, started sinking rapidly. I had gotten trapped by an iron beam that fell on my leg when I tried to climb to the deck. The cold water rose slowly, very slowly, first through my ankles, then knees, Waste. I screamed until my voice disappeared, but no one could hear me because of the storm above. And then, when the water reached my chest, I understood I was going to die alone, in the dark, drowned like a rat in a cage. The sensation of water entering my lungs, the desperation of not being able to breathe, the cutting cold, it all came back at once. I was dying again, only now in the basement of a construction site in Miami. That's when I heard the first crack. It was a metallic sound, like a beam breaking. I looked around and noticed that the basement walls had cracks. Small, almost imperceptible, but they were growing. And then I heard another sound, running water. The water table. The construction was too close to the bay, and someone had miscalculated the depth. The basement was taking on seawater infiltration, and the pressure was compromising the structure. James's memory saved my life. I knew exactly what was happening, because I had already died like this. I knew those little cracks would become fissures, that water would start gushing, that everything would collapse in a matter of minutes. I yelled for the workers to come up immediately. Some complained, said I was overreacting. But when you've already drowned once, you recognize the signs. I forced everyone to evacuate the basement. 3 minutes later, the south wall gave way completely. An avalanche of salt water invaded the basement with the force of a tsunami. If anyone had stayed down there, they would have died instantly, crushed by debris, or drowned in the murky water. The curious thing is that since that day, my water phobia disappeared completely. It's as if, by accepting James's memory, by understanding where my fear came from, I had freed myself from it. Now I swim, take ocean baths, stay calm in the rain, because I know James died so Marcus could live. But sometimes, when I'm near submerged structures, tunnels, basements, underground garages, I feel a subtle warning, a pressure in my chest, humidity in the air that shouldn't be there. And I listen. I always listen. Because when your soul has already been through the experience of drowning, it knows how to recognize when water is ready to kill again. The question I leave for you is, what inexplicable fear do you carry? What senseless phobia has pursued you forever? What if it's not a neurosis, but protection? What if it's your soul screaming, no, I already died this way once and I won't let it happen again? Sarah and Marcus never met, live in different states, have different professions, but both share something that defies our understanding of life, death, and the continuity of consciousness. What impresses me most about these cases isn't just the precision with which these memories manifested as life-saving premonitions. It's the transformation both experienced after accepting these experiences. Sarah developed a keen perception for dangerous situations involving cutting objects. Marcus not only lost his water phobia, but gained special sensitivity for identifying structural risks in submerged environments. It's as if their souls had become experts in avoiding the specific forms of death they had already experienced. During my years of investigation, I've catalogued more than 40 similar cases. People with inexplicable fire phobia who managed to evacuate buildings before fires. Individuals with height panic who witnessed fatal falls and moved away seconds before. Children with irrational animal fears who grew up to become exceptionally intuitive veterinarians. There's a pattern in these accounts I can't ignore, the surgical precision with which these premonitions manifest. They're not generic fears, they're specific, calibrated warnings, as if written by someone who intimately knows that form of dying. But perhaps most disturbing is a discovery I made just recently, researching historical archives related to Sarah's and Marcus's cases. I found records of a Marie Dubois, French peasant, executed by guillotine in Lyon on March 15, 1794. The physical description is identical to what Sarah provided from her dreams. Brown hair, blue dress, accused of stealing bread to feed her children. And in the archives of the English Maritime Company, I discovered the manifest of the ship HMS Perseverance, which sank in the North Atlantic in December 1847. Among the 127 crew members who perished, there was a young sailor named James Patterson, 24 years old, whose body was never recovered. According to survivor accounts, James was last seen in the ship's hold, trying to unblock a passage blocked by debris. Coincidence? Misinterpreted records? Or something much deeper and more terrifying? If our souls really carry scars from previous lives, this means death is not an end, but just a transition, and that each of us might be carrying, unknowingly, fragmented memories of how we perished in other times, other bodies, other worlds. The next time you feel an inexplicable fear, a phobia that never made sense, or a sudden premonition of danger, stop for a moment and ask yourself, could it be your soul whispering in your ear, protecting you from repeating a death that already happened once? Because maybe death isn't our enemy. Maybe it's our most rigorous teacher.